Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us again this week for our weekly Deep Lumen events with the amazing Joy Wu, who is the founder of Deep Lumen, or one of the founders, I should say, co-founder. Joy, I always give you the key title. And Joy's background in AI and technology and bringing technology to the market is really incredible, and we are very thankful to be able to work with Joy and Deep Lumen. Me, I'm Thomas Ross. I am the founder of Velocity Sales Solutions, and I will be hosting our guest today. And we are joined by someone who is right at the center of one of the biggest shifts happening in revenue, marketing, and AI search today. Please welcome Shayna Stewart.
Well, thank you. Excited to be here today with both of you.
Well, thank you. And Shayna, you're a leading voice in answer engine optimization and AI-driven visibility, helping companies to understand that critical shift. AI doesn't just send traffic anymore, it sends decisions. Your work in focusing on the brands and how they become answer worthy in AI search is critical, because if you don't do that, you're invisible. With your background, scanning data, product strategy, and growth, you're able to, and you have built and advised companies on how to turn AI visibility into real pipeline and revenue. And that's really what we want to start with today and start talking about today. So welcome, Shayna.
Yes, thank you for that introduction.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So just to kick things off, today's event is really to talk about why AEO is so important and why it's critical for brands to start to look at how to implement AEO into their strategy over the next 90 days. Shayna, do you want to give us a little bit of a walkthrough of how AEO is so important to the marketing and positioning and branding and sales strategy for organizations and brands today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we are in a moment, starting from just the beginning of this year, where we are starting to understand that answer engines, so answer engines are, ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, even Gemini overviews, which are now taking priority over the traditional search content. And we're seeing this moment right now where the answer engines themselves are saying, we want content for our platforms. And I think the big aha moment that I've had this year is that these are distinct channels. The answer engines themselves don't have any branding. They are text only. You have one screen, one interface where people are focusing their 100% of their attention on. And the overall user experience is really a natural conversation of questions and answers. And, thinking about these answer engines as a distinct, unique channel that is now additive to your marketing mix now, I think is a helpful way to start this conversation and to get everyone thinking that, we're not necessarily using SEO pages to rank within Google search, but that these are distinct user interfaces, distinct marketing channels that are quite literally saying, we want content to be like this so that we can cite you. You can actually have that conversation with these channels, which is completely new as well. And so, what we'll talk about today between the three of us is what should that content look like? How do you optimize for this new channel? How do you start to think about it as a new channel? All in the sense of how do you drive revenue and more leads within your pipeline.
Excellent. So in reference to that, what are the key elements structurally that a brand needs to start to learn how to do? And if we break that down into 4 or 5 steps, what would they be? So for example, the first one might be the AI Search Scorecard, right? And what does that mean and how does it work into it? And what are your thoughts around that, Shayna?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, first things first is definitely, build a scorecard, that's available on various websites, including my own as well. And it will actually take you through where you are right now and a step-by-step process of what you need to do to kind of mature along this new channel. And so I like to think of AEO as that there's a certain maturity model that gets you from, where you are right now all the way to being an expert. And I guess maturity model kind of gives it a bad name because we're used to maturity models being, 3 to 5 years to do digital transformation and millions of dollars. But the AEO maturity model is, getting through it in a matter of weeks for thousands of dollars. And so it goes very fast, as we would expect in this new AI world, that things are expedited and sped up. So don't get scared about like the idea of a maturity model, but there are certain steps in terms of people can take once you have this scorecard done, to see where you are within this maturity model and how to move very quickly along those lines. And so, the first level, which most people are past, but basically your site is completely invisible. It cannot be cited by AI. You might just have a few branded, a homepage, maybe talk about your products and features, and that's kind of where the content on your site ends. So most people have moved past that, particularly in B2B, because they've seen the value that SEO contributes to their site. So the next layer would be that you're pretty sophisticated in SEO. You've got a wealth of content around the consumer journey, but it's done in the SEO format, which is good because, SEO formats are going to have HTML accessible for the LLMs to reach, and your site's probably going to be indexed. So those are the two things that LLMs still use to carry forward into their channels, but that's kind of where the commonalities between SEO and AEO tech drop off. So if you're not considering the new channel's requests on how to advance past SEO, you'll kind of just stay stuck in the place where the AI can see your site. It might cite some content, but it wouldn't be consistent or regular or even show up on the most important questions that are being asked by your buyers. So the next phase would be, how do you get cited consistently for the most important questions? And you're going to start to see the actual content look quite different from SEO. So if you want to shift your content into be citable content, it needs to be in question and answer format. It doesn't really need to be written in like a marketing persuasive form. LLMs want more facts. So they're looking for trade-offs, costs and benefits. They're looking for tables. They want to be relatively sure that what's being said is factual and it's not that persuasive argument that you might say, okay, buy now. There is a way to sort of facilitate that conversation down the consumer journey. But that comes at the next level of maturity model in AEO. But in this phase, you're just creating content that's Q&A format. You're going to have schemas. So schemas will basically help the LLMs understand what the content is and how it's structured. So on the technical side, LLMs use schemas and the HTML really to surface your information within those user interfaces. So that's definitely step one of AEO that extends beyond SEO. And then, of course, you get to the fourth level of AEO maturity, which is becoming sort of the topic domain authority. And what you're looking for then, you've created these, your content is structured differently, but now you're creating a new section in your site, a new subdomain that is going to hold all of the content that you've created, and you're going to want to host it around all of the different topics that might relate to your brand or to your problem space. And that's where you really build out the richness and the understanding of I'm an authority in this space, and you can consistently cite me and my articles and always be right. And LLMs really appreciate that. So there are some structural changes to the site that need to be done. And then, of course, some ways to actually create that volume of content that gives you that authority domain.
That is excellent.
Wow,
That was a really good.
that's really impressive.
I will say this, we've got somebody who's commented here, Michael Doyle, and thank you, Michael. And he makes such a funny point. And in that, I find the main issue too is when you type in AEO specialist in Google, it will automatically edit it and send you to an SEO specialist.
Yeah.
So that kind of shows you where things are still catching up and
Yeah.
people are still learning.
Yeah, that's a great point.
How to do all this. One of the things we tell everybody, and this is really important, is that AEO does not replace SEO.
Correct.
It augments it, and it is the evolution thereof. In fact, AEO and GEO will not work effectively without all the great work you've done in
Exactly.
SEO, right? And that's so important for people to really grasp and understand. And Joy, how would you add to what that first step does, or would you? And do you think that was thorough, or how would you add to it?
Oh, I think Shayna actually made a very comprehensive. Like I'm literally taking notes in my mind. Is that like you literally illustrate so well than anybody else I've ever known? Because I feel like I've been doing AEO GEO since last year, and then so the steps you're mentioning covers it all. And agree, like SEO is really, GEO or AEO is built based on top of the SEO. So nothing else technically I want to add because Shannon does this such an amazing job. But one thing I do want to add is that because I've been talking to clients quite a bit, because oftentimes I think like last year when I started doing the AEO services, I'm thinking about it. It's a new channel, and then. And I did some cases with Intel, with Skywork, which is one of the top like agent from Asia, and then I did some like Land O'Lakes, etc., like local US brands as well. And later I start realize it might not be just a new channel; it might be an evolution, and that's where we start doing the fundraising. And very luckily, we close some rounds with like fundraising. And like one of the words Shanna mentioned earlier is persuade, like less about persuasion, more about factuals. And then when we talk about persuasion, it's exactly right because in the old times, pre kind of like the AEO era, it's all about you need to persuade your user that a human being that your brand is the top. So that's another. It's completely a different way to do it now because now it's not more. It's not about persuade any human being. It's more about factually letting the agent or AI knows you are the best in this vertical so that they will bring traffic to your website. And then that's when the persuasion needs to happening. But just the persuasion is not doing the work to AI. So we're saying that in the old times, marketing is about marketing to human being. But now we're saying marketing is also important to AI. So they the machines understands you and also recommend you in their window or portal with their with all the users and bring the users traffic into your website. So that's a completely different because I think originally whenever there's a new channel, say TikTok comes up or like you need to do like a specific campaign materials for that. So it's kind of like a new channel, new marketing sets. But now AI is actually almost like replacing all the decision making, and that's where you need to really build from scratch. And right before our webinar, we're saying internally through I was talking to Thomas. I was like, if a brand does not understand AEO and taking their time, which large organizations usually do, take up to 6 months or even more to understand what AEO is before they can take action, the time is very valuable. And because you need to build the foundation, it's not about let's get the new like images or videos for the new channel and which can be done within a month and then you're all done. So if you have your planning like January to June, and then starting July, you realize, oh, you need to invest in it. By the end of July, in the old channel, you can do it. But in the AI era, even everything is moving so quickly. But at the same time, you need to really rebuild all your marketing materials, everything into a machine readable format. That doesn't take you just a month. It takes you more than that. It's a foundation layer. So if you start in June, July, it will take you a while before you can actually having AI to understand you. 3 months, very minimal, 6 months at least. And that's also based on if you are having a very strong SEO. If you don't have a strong SEO, you need to start with SEO first. That's taking you to year 2027. And that's where 26, it's a very critical year, because some of my clients are coming to me saying that, hey, we're getting like say CPC of $3 from Google. How much you can get? I was like, that's a wrong question, because the real question you should be asking is that, if I were the brand, is that, are you getting a $3 CPC anymore this year from Google? Probably not, because the traffic from AI is losing to, even Google have amazing Gemini, it's a different traffic channel. So you're not getting as much, Google is not getting as much traffic in their pool anymore. So the $3 CPC you're getting last year, you're not getting it this year anymore. And it's getting more and more and more expensive, because the pool of the population or the user base are smaller and smaller, but the bidders are still, your competitors are still bidding in Google ecosystem. So that's on the like original or traditional search traffic side. And imagine if you're losing, say, up to a point where the CPC is so expensive that you cannot really get it or afford it anymore, where your traffic is. Not to mention the growth, just to maintain the same level of business from last year, you need AI traffic. But AI traffic needs so much foundation work. If you're not doing it this year, your competitor is doing this year, you're doubling, at least doubling your effort, because you need to persuade, or not persuade, but you need to letting agents who know who you are and making a decision between you and your competitor, who actually before, way before you are working their materials towards AI already. So you're losing behind, and that's where it's getting very, very dangerous. If you're not doing AEO this year and you think you're just losing a couple months, you're losing more than just that. That's just something I would like to add.
Yeah, and I would just take off on that to say what you're losing is a lot more than you think, because your ability to gain brand dominance 6 months from now is going to be significantly harder, a heck of a lot more expensive to do, if you can even do it. Because when people start to gain that dominance today with their brands through the methodology and the process that Shayna was describing, and that we'll continue to talk about today, they can own it. And as long as they maintain it, right, they can continue to own it. And to knock them out of that position is going to cost a great deal more than it would today to get up and get going and start to put these systems in place and take over that brand dominance within your industry. I call it the David and Goliath era. Very similar to when SEO started. When SEO started, those that jumped on that could overtake major brands and major competitors overnight, and billionaires were made. The exact same thing is happening today. And David can take Goliath today with that slingshot, which is now AEO. And that gives you the opportunity to skip all of that other stuff and to own the position in the market, so that AI brings you up, and now you're in a position to answer the question. And that's what's really critical. And then from there, we can put agentic AI and other mechanisms in place, so that now when people do see your brand, they become a lead in your sales funnel. And that's a whole other conversation. But I did want to come back to one other thing, and that was to get, more of a description around how we gain that authority, because that's what we gain, and credibility with AI. How do we do that, Shayna? And what does it take to get us there based upon where we are now? So what you said earlier was critical. We need to evaluate where we are and what we need to do, and not just in terms of ourselves, but in terms of where our competitors already are, because maybe our competitors are doing this too simultaneously, or they've done a bit of it, or whatever the case may be. So we need to know where we are in that series of competitive positionings, and then now what do we need to do physically, right, to gain that authority in terms of scale and volume?
Yeah, and I think one thing I'll say before I get into like what we have to do, just to round out both what yourself and Joy just mentioned, is that we're in a moment right now where the assets that we're creating with AEO are appreciating, compounding assets. So they gain value over time. And part of the reason is that the more authority and the more citations that you get over time, the more likely the LLMs are going to continue to bring your content up because they feel good about it. In their mathematical form, they feel happy and good and sure and accurate that this is the right content to surface. And so this is the first time in marketing where we've come from having appreciating assets, compounding revenue over time, because in the old way, which Joy had mentioned, they are depreciating assets, that if you launch a video, over time, that video won't work as well. And so we've had a whole complete paradigm shift of how this marketing asset will work over time, which is so exciting. And I think, by taking these steps that we'll walk through right now, is the most critical to do, like, today. And, it's not necessarily a complex task, or complicated in any sense, but it does take time and it does take a little bit of effort. And that's why, like, using a consultant to kind of jumpstart you and your team, who we've already done all the research. We know exactly what these LLMs are looking for. It's sort of a fixed time that these assets can get launched. And so it's really reduced a lot of the risk of launching into this channel. And so the way that we all advise our clients to start is, number one, actually, you want to think about these assets as a totally distinct content type from all of the other content on your website. And so thinking about the subdomain on your website, or even just a different subsection of your website that all of this content can live. And it might feel a little funny at first, but that, you kind of have these, I call them machine native content, machine native pages that are also human readable. If a human landed on them, it will still feel good and it won't feel like a abrupt experience. But these are machine native pages that are built for machines to read. So you want them to live in a distinct area. You don't want to disrupt any of the marketing mix and marketing spend that you have on other channels with other pages. So that's step number one. Step number two is really understanding the scope of the sort of topic domains that you want to cover. And so, as an example of that would be if you are doing peer-to-peer, like infrastructure payments, you might want to own the casual domain of what's the best way to send my friend some money. That might be one category. You might want to scale that domain authority, topic authority, all the way to how do I integrate peer-to-peer payments within my marketplace. So that would be a completely different audience that you're owning the domain for. And so, I think this is common among, other marketing channels as well, as who is the audience? And then how do you get into sort of the mindset of what they would be asking, these answer engines? And then, once you kind of have that audience strategy, and which should match your topic domain strategy, then you want to build out the content strategy. And so what are all the questions within that that you want to answer? And I think, like, one way that helps me think about it, at least, is how do you manage the conversational flow from very high level questions down to this is the right tool for you to use. And you don't want to do that in a persuasive way. You want to do it in a factual way. So that might be, Thomas, I think you mentioned, that might be bringing in some competitor content, which might feel uncomfortable, that might be calling out, like, hey, we're not the best in XYZ, but if you're trying to use it for this specific, use case, we're the best. And so you're helping people have trade-offs. And at the end, if someone in your audience is actually looking for a different solution, you might have to drop the conversational flow off at that point. But that's a risk that you'll have to take in terms of being the one that is the right tool at the end. And so, where marketers used to manage the consumer journey through behavioral targeting on different platforms, you're now managing conversational flow end to end all the way through. Right. And so there's a whole strategy that goes into that. And then once you have those things, then that you can go ahead and start building out that content. So it's not quite a lot of steps, but it is a sort of guided process that everyone will need to go through.
Just by way of volume and scale, give us a sense of that.
So per topic, sort of the where you want to own the domain per topic, you're looking at probably around 50 pages. You can do anywhere from 30 to 50 pages. But one of the things that LLMs do is that when they crawl your site, they actually look at how well linked each content page is to other pages. Right. And so the importance of that is it's saying, okay, like this page is really important because it's linked all over the site. And you also want to have interlinking by means of semantic similarity, so that the pages themselves are like, oh, this is similar to this page or the next step. And the importance of that is basically those things those two metrics actually tell the LLMs that this person knows what they're talking about in this particular domain. And so, if you get to that point where you have 30 to 50, it's counting those pages. It's looking like, oh, these pages are really interlinked together, so they must be important. And then they're linked in a way that's really smart. So I don't have to go to any other website to get the answer. I know that the next page that's linked within this page is going to give me the next answer.
Yeah, one thing to add that while Shayna is describing everything so clearly, one word come to my mind, it's Wikipedia. It's almost like a brand need to build a internal brand Wikipedia, pages of Wikipedia all talking about your brand, your product, and your anything about you, but it's all interconnected. And that also, I just thought about it because some of our clients are asking about, okay, we do Wikipedia because they're saying Wikipedia actually have a very big weight on being quoted by AI, which is very difficult and also pricey to do if your brand, your client really needs Wikipedia. But all of a sudden, instead of building or pushing your brand onto Wikipedia, why don't you build something within your brand website as in the form of, not in the form exactly, but it's kind of like wisdom mentality that you're designing a brand Wikipedia. It might work better and then also more efficiently. And also one thing kind of download it or another level down is that you need your brand knowledge base. I think that's where it's very abstract, all the marketing content to be a kind of like your database to start, knowledge base to start with. And then good thing is that, because I was literally talking to one of my good friend who's running a huge business in the old time marketing, but she's very interested in the topic. And then she's like, so if we're building a knowledge base for any brands, don't use it just in the AEO. Just think about, for AEO purposes, we need a brand knowledge base. But then once after that, the knowledge base is so important because in the future, you might need an agent to run through your entire company, and you can plug it in if you need. Just that's where it's kind of like the chip. It's almost like you guys are giving me a lot of ideas. I was so inspired by you because I was like, the knowledge base is almost like the chip within a computer. And that's where you can actually target all these different agents in the future. And the AEO is kind of like the marketing agent as a frontier, first line of defense.
I love that.
We've got a couple of questions here that I want to throw up because they're nicely in the mix, and I love to get the audience participation. So Brian Wang has asked, hi panel, is there an established way to attribute whether SEO or GEO campaigns work? Well, we know the answer for SEO, I think, right? I think there's attribution for that. There's common metrics for that. But what about AEO and GEO? And I'll put that to you, Shayna.
Yeah, and I'd love to get Joy's perspective too, because they do have a dashboarding tool in Deep Lumen. This is also new. And so there are different layers of analytics that you can look at. I think the most important one is your on-site traffic and the traffic that is getting referred to from these answer engines should be getting represented in terms of, if you have attribution for revenue or new meetings books or more demos booked, that sort of thing. But of course, you're going to have the traffic that's coming in that you won't have, referred direct from these LLMs, and that you'll just see an overall rise of meetings booked and all of that. So for me, I would be looking at meetings booked kind of before and after. And that would be the best way. It's not going to be perfect measurement, but at the end of the day, this channel itself specifically should be driving more leads, more meetings booked, and ultimately more revenue. And I know I'll let Joy take this one because she probably has a more in-depth answer around actually checking the citations and all of that. So
not so much deeper than yours, Shayna. Yeah, you covered it all. But yeah, I do want to mention like how it's being evolutionized, because last year when the AEO services just come out, it's always about AI visibility, and then it's about like before and after. So how we did cases back then, it's about you talk to the client and then define 5, 10, 20 queries, meaning the user prompt asking about their brand, and then we do a before and after analysis. Before the optimization, you're not showing up from the answer, and now you do. So that's why we call it AEO, because you are in the answer before and after. But sooner or later we realize that, because say for example, if you have 10,000 users visiting your sites every day, if they were all using ChatGPT asking about your website or asking about you, they're asking different questions. So 5, 10, 20 queries are not covering it all. So that's why sooner or later we realize that, yeah, AI visibility, if you're only doing query sets, might not be enough. And then later on, we kind of change or upgrade our business model to traffic. Because in the end, it doesn't matter before and after queries, but it's more about before and after if your website has organic traffic, because it is very hard to differentiate SEO and the GEO very clearly. Because, for example, and I think that's also why a lot of brands in the United States, especially the bigger ones, which are running marketing decisions per report and analytics, they're like, they know, the marketers, they know their users are using ChatGPT instead of Google or searching them. But from a reporting perspective, they're not seeing the number dropping from Google, because what's behind the back is that when users are asking about the brand, and then it's recommending all these different like brand, it's recommending your brand, but then it's not showing up any link for users to click to jump out of ChatGPT to get to your link website directly. So you cannot track those traffic. So because in the answer there's no link back then, so users will usually what need to do is that, for example, if I search what's the best AI video tool, I see all these names, and I really do need to use these video tools. So what user usually do is that they open up a Google site, and then they literally type in the name of that recommendation of any AI video tool and jump from Google to the website. So these are being counted as kind of like clickable. It's a CPC, but then it's really because of the AEO. Otherwise, you're not getting that CPC. So so instead of just measuring, which is not organic, if you're only measuring what geo is bringing your traffic, which could be a very subset of what AEO is really doing the value. So organic traffic growth, it's more healthy. And then another way, I think this year I see some P in the old times, there are a lot of PSEO. So nowadays I see some vendors are providing PGEO services, meaning that they're actually not just providing you articles, but they also aggregate your website and generating new content in a programmatic way. And then they're calculating their whatever is getting traffic onto their website. That's how they're calculating it. So that's, I think, could be something kind of like a middle steps. So in fact, I actually know vendors where they charge kind of a fixed cost plus any traffic they're bringing in. So it's almost like a mini Google where they charge per CPC, but just cheaper, or like in certain ways. Yeah, and then lastly, it's really a way where Diploma is doing that. We're like, forget about traffic, because in AI era, it's more about sales. It's more about leads. So let's do that, and then whatever sales I can bring you up to, because in the end, it's kind of like getting out into our website, your website, our page, and the actual conversion happened on that page, it counted as my sales. Like I actually attribute it to you, and that's where we kind of like split the profit. And that's where like currently I think the most advanced technology or offerings in the market is. We're still trying to figure out what's the best way to do the attrition, and we're seeing all these numbers. Clearly it's not easy, but then yeah, it's kind of like, I think the market of AEO is kind of like moving towards how to help business instead of just helping you to show up your brands.
Well, I would add one thing to that, and I love everything you said, and you led right to it, and you both did, and that is, it's connected to sales now directly. So what you're seeing now is you're not seeing all that stuff in the middle that may or may not lead to anything. You're now actually seeing the transaction, and you're seeing the leads. And what we can do with that now is we can create an AI sales pipeline, and we can actually connect those queries directly back to the answers, which hopefully your brand came up by being dominant as it relates to that query, which we help you do. And now we can bring in agentic AI to start helping actually corral, bring in, develop those leads, qualify them. And now you're not just counting, some of the old attribution things that we look for. You're counting the leads coming right into a sales pipeline that we help you create. So that's really critical. I want to answer or ask one other question here as well that Michael asked, and that was, does the age, and this is maybe for both of you, does the age of your content matter as well? And does it matter how many times you may have edited it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the LLMs do look at the create date and updated date. There is a little, a strategy around how you release this content, because paradoxically, LLMs don't want machine written content. They want to know, oh, this is actually a human wrote it.
Right.
And so, if you launch a bunch of pages all at once with the same create date, same update date, it finds it a little bit suspicious. So you do want to launch your pages as if it, the cadence of a human would be writing these. It does like that the update date does get updated frequently, but it doesn't necessarily need to be like every week or anything. But it does like recency. But again, you think about this paradigm shift of these are compounding assets over time. So the length, the pages that are getting written in answer engine format today are going to be more valuable than the ones that are get written tomorrow. And so in that sense, the create date is beneficial, particularly if you're creating content specific to these answer engines.
Yeah, Shayna does like a complete, the answers are 100% correct. And then one little example to add on top of it is really, we were doing one of the AR glasses. One of our clients, the top Asia AR glasses last year. And then, so we see like, say, even if you're saying, oh, what's the best AR glasses? User usually ask about what's the best AR glasses in the market. ChatGPT actually last year, ChatGPT actually will rewrite this query in 2025, what's the best AR glasses? But then this year they will rewrite the question in 2026, what's the best AR glasses? So time relevancy does really matter. And then because again, I think ChatGPT, all these AI, because they have capability of doing a very detailed analysis, that's where like your facts as granular as possible really helps. So I'm not sure about the editing part, and I think Shayna is 100% right on that one. But just about the posting date, I think it is really relevant.
Mm-hmm.
Great answers, and I think that's so important for people to understand, because they've got lots of content, they've done lots of great work. So the question is basically, can we reconfigure and reuse some of that content? And I think the answer is yes.
Yes.
But you need to do so on the basis of the rules by way of setting it up for that machine language, right? Using FAQs, using answer cards, using schemas, using all these formats so that it can be found. So it's the same content, it's just reformatted to fit today's process by way of AEO. And I think that's fabulous. But let me ask you both. So if I'm one of the folks that are that are watching this today, and we've got everything from CMOs and marketing folks to owners and founders and CEOs and directors, and they're all wondering, what are the 3 steps we should take today? So when we're finished, and wait till we finish, of course, when we're finished with this discussion today, what should we stop and start to do right away? What's step 1?
It's a tough answer, because depending of where your organization is at in terms of understanding, it could be a little bit of a longer journey, but it doesn't really need to be. I think the first question is, can we open up a new section on our site? And if you can, then you should immediately. The second step would be immediately contacting a consultant. All of us 3 really just to jumpstart the education and the process. Today or tomorrow. It's not, I think, difficult. And I think intuitively people are aware that, like, oh, how do I get my brand cited there? And it should be valuable because my buyers are on these tools and asking questions. And so I think the easiest way to start thinking about it is this is a new marketing channel that's available to us. And it just kind of needs its own distinct strategy that lives on our site, that is separate from the marketing pages that have already been created.
Yeah, I think that's all important. I think that might actually be the second step.
Yeah.
I think the first step might be to ask the question, where the heck are we today by way of this process as an organization? Who on our team gets it? What does that mean? To what extent are we building our current assets today, tomorrow, and the next day? And should we stop what we're doing in order to build this properly? Do we need to go back and configure what we've done? How are we positioned in the marketplace by way of our current positioning? What are the questions people are asking by way of our various brands, the solutions and services we may be offering? And how do we address that? And so on. And I could go on and list another 10 things. I won't for the to save us some time. But that's what you need to do today. You need to figure out where the heck you are in this process. And these questions that are coming up here, and there's quite a few, they all indicate that same thing. So they're all basically asking of themselves, well, we've done this and we've done that. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Right? Well, the number one thing it means is that you've done a lot of great stuff.
Yeah.
Right? You've done great work, and that doesn't go away. Right. Everything you've done counts. It may have to be reconfigured and maybe put into a different template to bring it back to life and up to date, just as you would anything else. But what you've done is important. The key number one thing is, let's find out where the heck we are and what we need to do and build a plan from there. And then also think about, what do we want from that plan? Are we looking for revenue? Are we looking for brand dominance? Are we looking for market positioning? Or what are we looking for? What's our objective? Like anything else. Then align those 2 things. And now you're coming to where Shayna was with respect to, what do we physically have to do with some of these current assets, and how do we do that? And then that takes the next step. What would be the third step? And that question I'm going to put to Joy.
Thank you, Thomas. And I completely agree with yours with the first step. Step 1, really do a fully analysis report, consulting report, to understand where you are, your current status. Yeah. Number 2, talk to Shayna. She's one of the top experts I've talked to, like, quite a bit since last year, quite a lot of people last year in this domain, because it's such a new domain. But Shannon brings so much expertise and also details to the facts and onto the table. I'm very impressed. And then step 3, I think it's more about scale that. How do you scale that? Not only just with the help of Shannon, but also with the help of technology. I think that's where Deep Lumen come into the picture. But when we talk about technology or product, number 1, because it's all knowledge base. For any organization you want to fight in the new AI era, you really need your domain knowledge or your knowledge base to be accumulated and organized properly. I think that's where you need technology to help you on that, not just human beings, human being plus product and technology to do that. Number two is really to think about how to leverage that or leverage the AEO processes to accumulate your own knowledge base, and then best use your knowledge base to apply across your business. It might be, I think one of the big buzzword I didn't mention, I forgot to mention this today, is really agentic commerce. AEO, it could be a new, it's a new traffic. But it's not only that, because it's bringing agentic commerce into the picture. Because imagine in the near future, no, it's no longer, it's not only human being to agent, it's going to be agent to agent, and agent is helping users to making the final decision. So agents, it will be part of the decision making in the final commerce. And for that, it could be for B2B SaaS, because it's, again, agent is helping your end users to make decision of where to leave leads, right? Or your information to for your potential leads. And also for D2C, it's exactly the same thing. Agent is making the final decision or be part of the final position to help users to make that purchase decision. So in that regard, you really need to be ready for marketing to AI. And that's where you leverage your database or your knowledge base and plug it in, not just for marketing, but also across your organization to get ready. Because when we talk about agentic commerce, we think about just, the sales, the final click, but it's not only that. Imagine in the future, your customer support, like instead of each brand has their own customer support, maybe user just want one customer support agent managing all their brands. And that's actually what we've been talking about in the office this week, is that we need to streamline the entire purchasing experiences for users from very initially discovery, then intent, then delivery, deal, right? All these processes, if you imagine it's going to be different agent of any user to deal with your agent, then you might need to get ready for that. In the future, it's not user asking about, hi, I want to return this Dyson, whatever, vacuum. It's their agent talking to you. Are you ready for that? So it will be longer. It will be a bigger journey, but then it's all coming from like the knowledge base of your organization. And I think that's where step 3 and technology can come into the picture to help out.
There's one thing I'd love to underscore, because it, for me, it was a big aha moment when I was going through Deep Lumen, and the way you say it, it almost could be hidden because it sounds so natural, but the whole concept of marketing to AI. And like, that is exactly what we're talking about. Like when we're saying we're building these web pages, they are not built for humans. They're built for, making, working with the AI. And I love that like Deep Lumen has captured that in such a simple statement of like, this is marketing to AI. AEO is sort of that first pathway in. But that really does, like you point out, Joy, it really starts to unlock this agentic commerce and how agents will talk to agents and decision in that realm. And, we haven't even scratched the surface there. So
well said.
Thank you, Shayna, for your kind words. And we're Deep Lumen is also just exploring everything. And then that's where all these webinars, the series of webinars are really for. It's about bringing the talents and experts and like the smartest brain in this domain together to really picture what's really the future is, and then get brands ready for that in advance.
Amazing. So well said. So well said. One of the other things that they'll sort of bring this to a climax, if I can, and that is we need to get away from theory and start to get into practice. So talking about this and learning about this is great. It's got to start somewhere, but it's like anything else. If you don't get on the bike, you're not going to learn how to ride it, right? That's how it works. And you are going to fall down. In fact, you're going to fall down a lot, but that's okay, because you will figure it out. And as you do, you're going to get better. And I would ask everybody here and everybody listening, because I know so many people this time of year are going to SEO conferences of one kind or another. And I would say that's great, because it's important to continue to learn. But I would also say, if that SEO conference isn't speaking about AEO and AI, I think you need to question whether or not it's worth going, right? Because SEO is important, but the next evolution is AEO, AI search, and marketing to AI. That is really where things are going. And so we need to combine those things. We need to learn about how they all work together. So I want to really thank you, Shayna, for taking the time today.
Of course.
And lending your expertise. It was so invaluable. We're going to have you back because I think there's a lot more that we can discuss. Because what we really want to do is to help people get into what do they need to do today. So what can they actually start doing today to take them down that path that you were so eloquently describing by way of the AEO steps that can now be taken. And Joy, as always, I want to thank you because with your deep background and with everything that you're bringing with Deep Lumen, that is going to be so incredibly powerful for people to start to learn to use and incorporate into their business models. And that's what we're here to do. So thank you, both of you. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And we'll be back next week. Thanks again, everybody. Have a super day.
Thank you.